Food Service with a Heart, a podcast series from Food Service Consultant Society International, FCSI. I'm Tina Nielsen. I'm the editor of FCSI's quarterly magazine, Food Service Consultant. In this podcast, we speak to people from hospitality and food service who affect positive change on the world beyond the kitchen. Food Service with a Heart is supported by Vulcan Equipment. Check out their website on www.vulcanequipment.com. In this episode, I speak with Nora Fitzgerald Belahcen, who's the driving force behind Amal, a social enterprise in Morocco empowering women to make a living from their cooking skills. So Nora, thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Food Service with a Heart podcast. You're very welcome, and we look forward to hearing your story. So if you could start out maybe by telling us a little bit about your background, and your route to working in food service and beyond, because obviously your role today is not just in food service.
Thank you so much for having me on the podcast. So I'm based in Marrakech, Morocco, and I really got into the food service industry by accident, a very happy accident, I may add. So my adventure kind of started in about 2012 when myself and two other women started a very small baking business. The idea behind this was that these two women had very difficult lives. One of them I met her when she was 40 years old, and she had been working since the age of 10 as a basically domestic assistant in people's homes, and had received very little money for that. And when I met her, she didn't have a penny to her name. But she had incredible sort of resilience and desire to work hard and ability to work really hard. And I mean, the other woman was in a similar situation. And I thought to myself, like, what if these two women had any kind of inkling of a chance at something else, at something, we started a very tiny baking business together, and I would look up recipes online and I would share those with them, and I would maybe demonstrate the recipe one time, and then after that they would make it much better than I had made it. And during the course of this year, they were both able to make a living doing this. We operated out of a school, and so it was kind of low risk, and we were all just trying to see what, on a very micro level, like what it takes to build a business around food. And we were so excited by these results of them being able to support themselves and their families just through baking, basically, that this created a lot of excitement and impetus to make it larger and open it up to more women. And that's really where the idea for what is today the Amal Center was born. I created the legal structure of a nonprofit in 2012. So we had been working, I think, the year of 2011, 2012 on this very small and informal basis, and then realizing that if this was going to be bigger, then it had to have some kind of legal structure and basically just more thought and a lot more resource and effort put into it. Then had this very ambitious idea of opening a restaurant with no, I'll just start it and I'm sure it'll run itself. Like this was the idea. I'll get it going. Yeah, I'm glad that I was kind of both courageous and naive at the time, because the idea was to open a restaurant that at the same time offered opportunities to sort of the most vulnerable, from our community.
They say ignorance is bliss.
Absolutely.
Talk me through a little bit the kind of the climate for women in the labor market in Morocco how unusual is it for them to have somewhere where they can go and hone their skills? Because I suppose cooking skills is something that they already have because they cook at home, but they don't have the knowledge of how to monetize it.
Absolutely. So that was really the idea, is to take something that they already have ownership of, that they already perfect and do very well, and to build on that to create like a professional skill set. I mean, Morocco, I think like a lot of the world, the cooking industry is still very largely male dominated. So it's very interesting that women do a lot of the unpaid cooking and men do a lot of the fairly well paid cooking. And so we've created now an organization that is women run and women, just for women and by women, and that's quite unique, I think, both in Morocco, but I think just anywhere, that uh, we sort of to trust in ourselves and our own capabilities and not be looking for like the man expert who's gonna save us or something like this. Uh, I'm very proud of the organization that we've built. Right now, we're about 35 people on staff. 3 of those are men in kind of logistic positions. And, you know, but we have like two heads of kitchen chefs that are women. Uh, just throughout that, it's women run. And then that 35 people doesn't include our students, of course. So our program functions on the basis of a cohort of students joining us for 9 months and spending these 9 months in the kitchen along with their chefs and their trainers, and really honing this skill, as you said, that maybe they don't have the chance to do elsewhere. So there's several factors at play. There's several barriers to this access. One is gender, yes, but one is just basic poverty. So cooking and cooking school is reserved for people who come from prosperity and can pay for the program. It's not, it's I think what I've discovered over the years is to become a good cook or professional cook, not talking about even chef, but just is you have to be immersed in the restaurant industry, in the restaurant culture. I mean, so like going out to eat and constantly like putting together all of these things that create your culture of food. And with our students, although they're receiving a training to work in a kitchen, to work in a restaurant, many of them have never been to a restaurant. So it's very interesting, like how I never, in terms of awareness of my own privilege or the privilege that many of us have, I'd never really thought of that as like, oh yeah, I have built up a lot of knowledge just from my own experience of going to a restaurant, sitting down, reading a menu, having a whole interaction, tasting different foods, tasting cuisines from all over the world, and kind of building a repertoire of, knowledge about food through that. So one of the things that, we do in addition to our training is like we go to restaurants together and experience that and sort of learn from those experiences.
It's just we take it for granted when it's not something that we even have to question. So that was just part of your reality. It must have been quite eye-opening for you.
Yeah, exactly. Kind of learning and unlearning a lot of my own privileges and biases around that.
So you start the bakery in 2012. How soon after the start of the bakery do you think, let's open a restaurant? And how soon do you actually open the restaurant?
Yeah, it was towards the end of the school year, became really obsessed with the idea of this restaurant. And I feel like I spent like about 6 months constantly mentally processing it, like every waking and sleeping moment almost. And it was these different things. First, it was like finding the space. And there's a lot of like looking all over town, going to different locations for rent and all of this. And then it was like designing the space and designing the kitchen, and then it was getting the chairs. And I remember like I spent like weeks like obsessing about chairs, you know, like what would these chairs look like? And in the beginning, like everything we had was secondhand. Like there, you know, it was a very bootstrapped project. I didn't have any budget. Everything was just from community, family, and friends. There were a lot of different things I was obsessed with. And then I remember it was in April 2012, 2013 that we opened our doors, and we were like, we are a restaurant and we are going to receive customers. And that was really scary. I just remember being, you know, like this whole mental process I had in my mind was finally emerging into reality. It was terrifying and thrilling. And I remember we didn't overly advertise it. We just thought we would open and sort of see who showed up. And I remember we had 4 customers the first day. And, you know, now we have on an average day we have about 100 customers, and then on Friday we have around double that, because Friday is a very popular day at the restaurant. We have couscous. It's the traditional dish of Morocco, and we just have loads of people like reserving. It's booked by Tuesday. It's booked for Friday full.
Wow.
So
So the women who work in the kitchen, are they all part of the program that you run? Are they in the kitchen after they've done the program?
So we have staff members who are with us always, and then we have students who come for the 9 months. Many of our staff members are also people who have gone through the program, and then some are hired from out. It's just a mix.
So you're 11 years into the opening the bakery. Is the bakery still going, or is that now part of the restaurant?
Melted into the restaurant, and but then in 2018 we reopened it, the cafe. It's like a little cafe, and it's so it's one of our like little micro offshoots. We opened in the same location, and it's an interesting story, because in 2018 we had a group of students who were deaf, and that was just a super interesting whole other dimension to add to what we already do, which is work with, you know, women emerging from poverty, and women who have not had a lot of access to education. And then so we're adding in like an element of the deafness, and seeing how that kind of works with everything as well. And it was a really beautiful experience having them in the program. Our staff members learned an amount of sign language that they could use related to food. And when these students graduated, there wasn't much luck placing them in a job, because employers, they just couldn't wrap their mind around this, of like how they would communicate with this deaf person. Whereas actually it is possible. Like it's very possible. Like you don't even have to speak sign language. There's a lot of ways to communicate, but we didn't have any luck with that. So we decided to create our own small cafe run by our deaf students. And that it's sort of come full circle, because it started in that location, it kind of ended, and it came back to that location. And it's been a beautiful project on its own, as like just a complete offshoot of the greater Amal work.
That's a wonderful story. Tell me a little bit about what kind of results have you seen from the project? How would you describe the positive impact it's making on your community?
Well, I mean, it's helping women who have very little job prospects sort of enter into the labor market. Their earning ability increases between 2 and 5 times. That's the average that we've found. What I hope for is not just the job, right? Like, yes, that's crucial and that's important, but there's also like an inner transformation that we both hope for, and we keep witnessing this, like what happens when someone is in a space where they're valued and they're honored and they're seen and they're given space and they're allowed to take up space. Like what does that do? And it's you can even see it sometimes in the body language of the women that we work with. Like sometimes when they come in, I notice that they're even like physically trying to take up as little space in the world as possible. Maybe like they're hunched over, they're not making eye contact. And we really work on this, like even just expanding how you fill the physical space. And that's the energy that you carry with you into the world. That's for me, that's what empowerment looks like. That's what success of the program looks like. Of course, a lot of them, they go from, feeling like they're a burden on their families, or coming from very poor families where they're often like there's a sick father and a something handicapped brother, something where there's just a lot of different need, and all of a sudden they become one of the primary earners in this family and are able to sort of lift the whole family up. That's really powerful. And a lot of our new students come in because they know somebody who's gone through the program and they've seen that transformation and they want that for themselves.
And of course, this year you were recognized by the world's 50 best restaurants with the Champion of Change Award.
Yeah, that was very exciting. um, it's yeah, I'm very proud and humbled by that. And also it was very cool to go to the award ceremony and like for a moment sort of drop into the world of luxury cuisine, and see what that's like, and sort of see these masters of their craft, like the best in the world, the best chefs and the best pastry chefs, and see how it's like this kind of confluence of artistry and science to arrive at that level.
I'm sure it's a two-way street. I'm sure you would have inspired many of them with the work that you do.
Mm, mm. I mean, and just to realize that we are part of a continuum, they are where they are. Other people are starting on that journey and they may arrive wherever that gets them. But uh, just to realize that it's, we're all part of this thing of making food for other people and serving it to other people. And the power of food, to both, nourish the body, to soothe the soul, to bring people together, to create jobs, to change lives. There's a lot around food. And so we believe in the power and magic of food.
I wanted to talk to you a little bit about because I think since you and I spoke last time, you had a terrible earthquake in Morocco that all of a sudden made you a fair bit busier and must have changed your day to day quite a lot. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so that was an of course, very unexpected. Nobody ever expects an earthquake. It happened in early September. Very quickly, I realized that our organization would have some role to play, and that has evolved from the beginning. The first thing we did, of course, was get together and cook for people. And that was lovely. We got together, I think 2 days after the earthquake, and we started to make food for the people in the villages that, a lot of roads and were cut off, houses, whole villages were destroyed. There was no way to get food to these people. And we were very fortunate to be contacted by World Central Kitchen from the very beginning, which I'd always been a fan of their work, but then realized that I would only get to work with them if circumstances were tragic. So it's both good and bad news if you get to work with World Central Kitchen. And they were supporting the they funded the food making, which was really great because we were able to do large volumes, and they did the distribution. So we did in that first few weeks close to 20,000 meals in conjunction with them. Since then, our response to the earthquake has evolved over time. In the beginning, we set up a fund and people started to donate to it, and it went kind of viral. And people told us that they trusted us. And that was both comforting and terrifying to hear. Because I'm like, oh, I'm in charge now. Like, yeah, it's like, okay, we're the frontline workers, and we'd found ourselves in that situation before during COVID, and it's just stepping up and doing things as they appear and going with that. And so with that fund, we've kind of accompanied this little group of 27 villages in one area very close to the epicenter, and we've created a very ongoing relationship with them. So what that's looked like recently is we've been delivering fresh produce to the villages. And so we send up one truck every week. It's about 2.5 tons of produce, and it's distributed among the villages very carefully so that each family receives exactly the same amount. We also distributed kitchen kits, which are just a kit that contains everything one family needs to cook with, because a lot of them lost even their most basic things under the rubble. And so we've delivered between 300 and 400 of these kitchen kits, and that's been really sweet. And so it's really ongoing. Right now we're working on shelters because people are living in tents, and a lot of them are living in makeshift tents. It's getting cold, we're having rains, and it's catastrophic, to be honest. And so we're really working as fast as we can to get these more sound, like prefab little units, for people to live in and to survive the winter.
So this is still ongoing, and it probably will be ongoing for a while. Yeah.
We're still very much in disaster response. We're still in shelter, food, sanitation, water. We haven't moved into like development or helping people rebuild their livelihoods. Right. And the scope is quite massive. So, but we just are where we are. Like, this is just the reality, and we and many, many other NGOs are just doing what we can.
Yeah. So, are you still working in conjunction with World Central Kitchen now, or are you kind of flown the nest, so to speak, and flying solo?
They were working hard from the beginning to set up these very large kitchens, which they managed to do, and then they moved away from working with partners like ourselves. But we kept kind of running a parallel path with World Central Kitchen because we did some of the same things. Like, we were delivering vegetables, they were delivering vegetables. We were doing kitchen kits, they were doing that. So we realized that we were sort of thinking about things in the same way.
Listeners will detect that your accent is probably not Moroccan. So just tell me, sort of give me a quick summary of like where you came from.
Of my origin story.
Sure.
So my parents are both from the US. They're both American, who decided in the early 1970s to move to Morocco. I think just as part of a, adventurous spirit, looking for maybe a different way of living. And so they came to Morocco, and I was born here. And I grew up very much immersed in Morocco and everything Moroccan. Grew up speaking English and Moroccan Arabic, just as my native tongues, in a sense. And so at that time, there weren't a lot of people like me, but now there's getting to be a lot more of people that have interesting or unusual backgrounds. And I think also, like, me being placed in this position like really is helpful to the work that I do, obviously, because I can inhabit both of these worlds, like the Moroccan world fully, and then I can also articulate and express some of these realities in English, which makes it a lot more accessible to the whole English speaking world. And I think that's been helpful from day one, both storytelling, crafting this organization, fundraising, whatnot. So it's just by the luck of the draw that all of this is coming together.
Just very finally, very briefly, I'm interested in your thoughts generally about generosity in food service and hospitality, and the role that restaurants and chefs and other kind of players in that industry can play to help to create a better world. Do you think that there is a generosity at the core of food service?
I think that there can be. There's an interesting concept in Morocco that's called baraka. So it's loosely translates to blessing. And so they say, what are the things that put baraka in food, that put blessing in food? And it's both like where the origin of the food is from, the money that's used to buy it, how it's shared with people. So I think like there's almost like a value chain that comes with the food and how it's processed and how it, that can be both either very positive or as we've seen, very negative as well. So I do think that those of us who deal with food have that responsibility to infuse it with as much of this baraka as possible.
Perfect. Well, on that note, Nora, thank you so much for taking the time to speak to me. I think what you've created is incredible, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It's been a pleasure to talk to you about it. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of FCSI's Food Service with a Heart podcast. I'd like to thank our sponsor, Vulcan Equipment, for supporting the series. Check out their website on www.vulcanequipment.com. Please also check out the FCSI website, fcsi.org, for more articles and virtual content. Thank you and have a great day.